Welcome everyone to a Fathom video and podcast. My name is Kalev Ben-Dor, co-editor of Fathom. I'm joined here by my other co-editor, Jack Omer Jackaman, and we are extremely happy to also be joined by Efraim Halevy. Efraim is decades worth of experience. I mean, when I say decades, I'm talking about 5, 6 decades worth of experience in the issues that we are interested in. He joined the Mossad in 1961, and after a stint as ambassador to the EU, became director of the organization from 1998 to 2002. Subsequently spent a year as director of the National Security Council, and he's generally considered, I would say absolutely considered, to have played an essential role in the achievement of peace between Israel and Jordan in 1994. Now this is part of a series, Those Who Tried, Conversation with the Peace Processors, and the vast majority, if not all of those, have been focused on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We're very happy to now be focusing on the peace agreement between Israel and Jordan. I want to just start by setting the scene. So the Declaration of Principles between Israel and the PLO, which is generally referred to as the Oslo process, was signed in September 1993. And negotiations with Syria begin soon after. Now, at the same time, there's been this ongoing relationship, I'd say spanning decades actually, between Israel and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. And several meetings have taken place in the 1980s to explore a potential warming of relations. The Gulf War has taken place in 1991, and the King of Jordan, King Hussein's general siding with Saddam Hussein of Iraq, has left him and the kingdom relatively isolated, most importantly from the American administration. And within more or less a year after the Israeli PLO signing, there's a formal peace agreement between Israel and Jordan, something that Efraim details very interestingly in his book, Man in the Shadows. So firstly, Efraim, it's a real, you've been a friend of Fathom for many years, but it is a real pleasure to be speaking to you today. So thank you and welcome.
I'm very happy to be here with you. I've been following many of your public and published contributions to the knowledge of what is happening in the Middle East, and it's a privilege for me to be one of your guests.
Thank you, Efraim. It's a genuine privilege for us. So in your book, which I would absolutely recommend to anyone who's interested, you begin the story of the peace agreement with Jordan with a meeting you had with Dennis Ross and the late Martin Indyk, and your Jordanian trip, which had preceded it. What do you think moves the late King Hussein to want to stop proceeding step by step with Israel and instead go for a comprehensive peace? And why, at that stage, are the Americans cautious?
Well, let's begin with the beginning. I entered the scene when Jordan has, as you said, decided not to join the war at the time and to be on the side of the Allies, so to speak. And it is obvious that at that time there were two things. A, that he preferred not to be involved in the conflict because he had a certain relationship with Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and he didn't want this relationship to be soiled. And although as a result of this, more or less, he was awarded, so to speak, with an embargo on Jordan, forcing Jordan to work through the south of the country, Aqaba, and using Aqaba as a naval port. But in order to get to Aqaba, they had to go through the main route from the capital of Jordan and Aqaba. And generally speaking, Hussein at that time was very, very concerned with what was going on. He believed, from what he was being told by Saddam Hussein and others, that if he joined or if he allied himself with that side, he would be awarded probably by being the number one concerning the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Why do you think Hussein, after the war, um, in some ways changes tack and moves from a more kind of covert, gradual relationship with Israel towards pushing for a comprehensive peace?
Well, first of all, he saw that things were moving. It was not only that there was a negotiation between the United States and the Palestinians, there were also negotiations going on at the time with Syria, with Damascus. And it so happened that when the relationship with Syria was underway, the secretary, I think it was Warren Christopher, if I'm not mistaken, was more or less conducting a capital to capital meetings. And at one time, the question arose of whether the United States would be interested in allowing another process to begin, and that would be with Jordan. At that time, I was asked to meet with the two negotiators of the United States, Martin Indyk and Dennis Ross, and I met them late in the evening in King David Hotel in Jerusalem after a very rough time they had with Rabin and being exhausted after flying in from Damascus. And I told them that I thought that from my contacts with Hussein, he was ripe for an approach to him to maybe get the war or get the animosity between Israel and Jordan to become an issue to be tackled and even ultimately to reach a peace treaty. Martin Indyk and Dennis Ross at that time did not agree on what I was saying. But in the end, they agreed that I should approach Hussein and speak to him. And I told them that if Hussein was approached, I think the United States would agree to enter into a relationship with Jordan. There were two problems that had to be solved over this. One was the question, of course, of the future of Palestine and the question of what happens if we make a peace treaty with the Jordanians, what it means about various issues like the Temple Mount. But also it's a question of whether the dictator of Syria at the time, Hafez Assad, would accept and would agree to have Jordan enter into a peace negotiation. And that was something which we had to explore in one way or another. Hussein had to explore it. And what happened was that when the Americans were en route back to the United States, we were able to communicate to them, to the aircraft, that we had approached Hussein and he was interested. More than that, I think at that moment I at least indicated that I thought that if we entered into a negotiation of one kind or another, we would be able to get a passive agreement, understanding from Syria that would allow Jordan to enter into a peace treaty with Israel without uh, trying to prevent this from coming about.
Thank you, Efraim. In those negotiations with the Americans, you're very often in the position of putting the Jordanian case, really. At one point, Ross even asks you whether you working for Israel or Jordan. Was that a strange position to be in?
Yes, well, what happened was that I came at one time uh, after a long negotiation. King Hussein was able to get an invitation to visit Washington. And the relationship at that time between Washington and Amman was not a very, very, very close one. But it was agreed that I would come to Washington. And since the ambassador to Washington, Professor, what's his name? He was the ambassador to Washington, a former president of the Tel Aviv University.
Itamar Rabinovich?
Itamar Rabinovich, yes. He was away from Washington because his daughter was getting married, so he was not there. So in the end, what happened was that I was to be the representative, so to speak, speaking to Washington on behalf of Israel without having necessarily a representative of at the level of Itamar Rabinovich and on the scene. And although I have a great respect for him, I'm not sure that if he was there, things would have gone as well as they did in the end. What happened was that at one time the discussions began with Hussein in Washington, meeting the key people and getting somewhat negative answers. Because he was seeking also not only an improvement in the relationship between the two countries, but also he was seeking military equipment, including aircraft and so forth. So at one time when I came to meet Dennis Ross, a day before he was ultimately going to see President Clinton, and I told him that I thought it was important to meet the requirements of Hussein. And he said to me, well, tell me, who are you talking to? Who are you representing? Amman or Israel? And I said, I represent both. So he thought it was a good joke, but also maybe a good way of pushing things forward. And the result was that after receiving negative answers from all the people we met in June, I think it was possible to have a meeting between Hussein and President Clinton, and they had lunch. And the main issue which Clinton raised was the fact that the civilian aircraft of the Jordanians were not American aircraft. They were French aircraft and so forth. And for him, it was very important to get one more client for American aircraft. And Hussein agreed to that. So that put things in the right direction. On our way back, we began discussing how to put forward the continuing negotiations with with Jordan. I had to come back home very quickly because I had to have a meeting with Hussein on one or two other matters, and he had a stopover in London. And what happened was that he landed in Heathrow Airport, and he was handling the aircraft as it was landing, and it was quite an experience to see how he spoke to the tower. And I had to wait from getting off the aircraft till everybody else had departed. And I sat in the aircraft alone. Nobody told me to get out. In the end, I got out, and the guard of honor that was waiting for me, well, that was not the idea, but they didn't ask me who I was, and I was able to move from one of the stations in Heathrow and to fly back home and to report. From this moment on, we were in a very, very important state of the negotiation. By that time, the companion I had with the negotiation with Hussein was Eliakim Rubinstein, who was the Attorney General, and we used to travel together to Amman. But once his role in the negotiation after the Madrid conference in Washington, and they were negotiating there with Syria, with Jordan, with others. He became a public figure, and Hussein asked him not to come more again in the guise of a secret visitor, because it would be something that the Jordanians would not like to expose by virtue of having him continuing to be in the two roles, both the public role and the non-private role. And that's the way I became the negotiator on the key issues with Hussein.
We should add at this point, I think, that you're number two in the Mossad at this point.
Yes.
So I assume, Efraim, your identity is not known in Israel
No.
as number two in the Mossad. You're just a letter. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And what it also means is that after a month, it was decided that Hussein would come to Washington and to sign a declaration together with the United States called the Washington Declaration. I was the person who sat in Amman and wrote the wording of the Washington Declaration. It was sent to Rabin alone, nobody else. And at the last minute of the draft, Hussein added a chapter dealing with Jerusalem and the role of Hussein in Jerusalem. I told Hussein that I have no authority to negotiate about Jerusalem. So he said, if it's not there, then I will not continue with the negotiations with you. So what happened was I came back and gave it to Rabin, and I thought Rabin would more or less throw me out of the room. But he put the document aside and he said, okay, thank you. I'll be in touch with you in a day or two. And in a day or two, he called me in, and he had consulted a figure whose name has not been revealed to this very day. It was a person who had legal status, not Rubinstein. And the wording that Israel offered Jordan on Jerusalem was by far what the King Hussein had required or requested in his wording. So all this was put in place, and then although the negotiation on the peace treaty had not yet begun in full steam, it was agreed that a month later there would be an event in Washington, and we would take the document that I had drafted and had been approved by Hussein and the king and Rabin, and it would be brought to President Clinton to approve this, and that is what happened. What happened was that due to the fact that I was no longer a public figure, and due to the fact that Foreign Minister Peres was not part of the negotiation, although he at one time had visited Hussein and negotiated himself with Hussein and made an agreement with him, which ended up very badly, but that's not the important part here. And I boarded the aircraft a day before Rabin was going to arrive in Washington, and a lot of the press people who knew me, some of them knew me, saw me on the plane, but they had no guess as to why I was there. But we parted ways, and the following day, Rabin came to Washington, and the Americans wanted to get the text of the Washington Declaration. So in order to get the text of the Washington Declaration, it was necessary to make sure that the Jordanians were in line with us on this. And Peres wanted to add his wording of this, which the Jordanians could not accept. And Prince Hassan, who was the person negotiating on behalf of the king, also couldn't accept. But what happened was that there was going to be a reception that evening between the Israeli delegation and the Israeli ambassador, who had wanted to see Itamar Rabinovich. By that he was back in Washington. He wanted to see the text and I was not allowed to provide it with him. And what happened was that we all came to the ambassador's residence. Eitan Haber there was the chief of staff of the prime minister, and we were sitting there, and we were going to depart from his house to come to a meeting with the Americans, including Ross, to give them the agreed document which we had agreed with the Jordanians to get the Americans to agree to it. And as we left the room of the ambassador's residence, Rabin, apparently what he did was, because he wanted to make a point, he said, if you think that I'm the person who's been negotiating, the person you see walking out of the door here, he's the person who's been doing all the negotiation.
That's to the Israeli media, he says that.
Yes, yes. So the following day, I was on the front page of all the media, which meant two things. A, that I would have to leave the Mossad. And secondly, because it was to some extent embarrassing from all the points of view. One thing happened at that moment, and that was when actually the Washington Declaration was announced on the lawn of the White House. I was sitting in the second, third row, and the wording on Jerusalem was something that was unacceptable to Peres. He didn't know about that. And when they reached that point, the Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who was a friend of mine, when he heard the wording on Jerusalem, he turned around to me and said, "How dare you make such an agreement on a document like this? This is not what we agreed on." I said, "Agreed with who?" And he realized that he'd be in trouble, yeah. And he said, "Well, yes, it's an agreement with Yasser Arafat about Jerusalem." I said, "Well, I'm terribly sorry to disappoint you, but this is it. We have now an agreement with the United States concerning what is going to be the role of Jerusalem and the role of the Hashemites on the Temple Mount, which was the key element from their point of view concerning what Hussein wanted. He wanted to be the guardian of the Temple Mount for Islam, for the entire Islamic world, and we were able to provide him with it."
So that's kind of connected, Ephraim. I feel like something that very much comes across, but I don't think enough people talk about this, is actually the rivalry and maybe even enmity between the Jordanians and the Palestinians, especially when it comes to Jerusalem. Can you talk a little bit about how that played out, and to what extent do you think those tensions over the future of the Holy City still exist today?
I'll begin with the end. I think that from the point of view of King Abdallah, who I knew quite well, I'll tell you something about that in a few minutes. I think that from the point of view of King Abdallah, to be the person who gave in to the role of the who is the Islamic major representative, if you will, of the Muslim world should be Jordan. I think he would not be able to live with this, and it could cause serious, very, very serious problems in Amman.
Thank you, Efraim. One thing I think viewers might not have a sense of is just quite how much these kind of processes depend on personal relationships and trust, as much as, if not more than, kind of state to state or state interests. Can you share some of the examples of this in the Israeli-Jordanian case, and perhaps reflect on how that compares with the Israeli-Palestinian situation in the 90s?
Well, my relationship with Rabin began when he was an ambassador in Washington and I was the Mossad representative in Washington from 1970 to 74. And he left Washington in I think it was the March or April of 1973, a few months before the Yom Kippur War. But the relationship between Rabin and myself in Washington was a very, very, very close one. And due to necessities of secrecy, all the communications between the Prime Minister Golda Meir and Rabin were exchanged through my channel of communication to the Mossad, when they forwarded on to Washington to Jerusalem. So we were very close together. We became, I would like to say, friends. and close friend. And this also had a result afterwards when he became prime minister on special tasks which I was entrusted after I came back from Washington and became deputy and head of the what they call Tevel. Tevel is the universe. It means to say all the relationships that the Mossad had with or has with various countries all over the world. And therefore, the relationship between Rabin and myself was something which I always treasured. But when it came to the negotiation on the peace treaty, he was able to determine what will be the final wording and nobody else. And I think he thought and he believed that it would be a necessity not to renege on an official agreement between him and King Hussein, who by that time, by the way, his illness became more and more pronounced, and this was a period of time in which I used to meet Hussein very, very often in either in Europe or elsewhere or at home. And unfortunately, I saw him gradually withering away, unfortunately. And then when ultimately he died, I was one of the official delegation of Israel, 5 people only, the Prime Minister, of course, and President of the Supreme Court, and 1 or 2 others, who were the official representation of Israel to the funeral. Hussein was a man for whom I had enormous respect, a person who understood very well the problems of day to day. He, amongst other things, was a pilot. He used to fly aircraft. He very much liked to be clothed in the uniform of the Jordanian Air Force. And he was a man true to his word, and a man with whom I have a stream of letters which I have still, in which he wrote to me very warmly, and he reached the point where he used to sign the letters, "I am your brother, Hussein." So these are the kind of things I think that are part of what I take with me as I advance in life, and some of the most poignant experiences I've had were with the Jordanian monarchy, including with King Abdullah. Actually, I was with King Abdullah when Saddam Hussein was defeated in the second round of war with Iraq. And we sat together in a room of one of the leading figures in Jordan. And together we watched how the large statue of Saddam Hussein was brought down. If you remember, it was an enormous statue of his in the center of Baghdad, and it was brought down and with a very, very prominent event, and that had decided he would come by where he was, where I was, and we would watch it together. So these are signs of the small little items, small little aspects of how you build relationships and how you nurture them, and how you, in the end, you realize that these are relationships which are genuine and not just for the sake of doing things the right way.
If it's not private, can you share what King Abdullah's thinking when the statue of Saddam Hussein is coming down?
I think he realized that Saddam Hussein was a very nasty piece of wood, if you could call it that. And he was not very troubled by the fact that he was brought down. But I would like to say to you that over the years, we have developed relationships with King Hussein and with Abdullah. And the fact of the matter is, as you know, that several times when the Iranians tried to use Jordanian airspace in recent years, in recent months even, to attack Israel, some of the key missiles that were launched from Iran in the direction of Israel were brought down by the Jordanians. I think they made a major contribution to the defense of Israel in many ways. Not that we want to be too prominent about this, but also because we want to preserve the relationship which we have with Jordan. We have a common border, and this is something which is key to our security. The longest border that Israel has with any other country is the border with Jordan, and therefore, the border is the Jordan water, the Jordan River is not a very effective river these days. You can easily cross it, and I think that, with all due respect, the importance of Jordan maybe is not sufficiently appreciated by the powers that be in Jerusalem these days.
That's a nice British understatement, Efraim. So when discussing the peace treaty with Jordan in your book, and the various sensitive topics that needed to be overcome, you later raise the question of the importance of individuals. And you write as follows: did the final outcome prove that history always marches on, regardless of the momentary weaknesses of the figures that strutted stage, or, as I'm led to believe, that often history is the victim of the drawbacks of human nature? 30 years on, what are your thoughts on the balance between these two things?
You mean the balance between us and King Hussein, or my balance today?
The balance between the importance of the individual versus the historical trends that are pushing in a particular direction.
I understand you. I think if you look at history, and you look at history closely, Israeli prime ministers have always felt a very deep and serious necessity to have a relationship with the President of the United States. And I think that not all of the presidents of the United States were of the same the same, shall we say, friendship with Israel. But most of the presidents of the United States were friends of Israel. And I think it's important to preserve the friendship as we see these days with President Trump. But one has to be very intense, and one has to invest in this. And I think that these days, the way the relationship between the White House and Jerusalem is being handled is not ideal. And I think that as we speak at this moment in time, we have a problem on our hands concerning the status we have in the region, the status we have internationally. And there was a very, I may say, unfortunate statement yesterday by the Prime Minister, which raised a lot of problems concerning the future of Israel's relationships with countries and so forth. And you have to be very careful with this, very, very careful with this. Although he said what he said yesterday, I'm sure you know it. You'll find the quote in the press today. One unfortunate point made in his appearance yesterday was to make a derogatory comment about China. Now, China today is a very important power. China is a kind of power which has also a growing presence in the Middle East. And China has its interests in the Middle East. And it has agreements with key countries in the Middle East. And it has a presence in Djibouti, where there is just 10 years ago, it began with a presence of in Djibouti, with many other countries having a presence, also naval presences, when Djibouti became an independent state. It's only 1 million population, but it's an independent state. But many countries have representations in Djibouti, in Europe, Italy, France, Britain, Germany, Canada, many of the presences in Djibouti. Well, the Chinese have set up a presence in Djibouti, and 10 years later now, it's probably one of the biggest bases that the Chinese have in the Middle East. And it has a key for warships, including the largest warships you can imagine, including aircraft carriers. And it also has a very deep presence there somewhere in the ground, very, very deep. Some people say it's safe enough against a nuclear attack. So China is a very, very important country today for us as well. And it was unfortunate to make a statement about China yesterday, and I should imagine that the Prime Minister of Israel may even regret having said what he said. But since I know the Prime Minister quite well, then I have no relationship with him today. In the past, I served him well in serving the relationship with Hussein over many years. And after that, with King Abdullah, I don't want to say something derogatory about the Prime Minister in a general sense of the word.
Brian,
So
thank you.
I hope I've been as diplomatic as possible.
Yes, I think so.
Some might say too diplomatic, even.
No, I think no. There's no such
Just the
thing.
just the right level.
Okay, right.
Thank you very, very much, Efraim. I think given viewers a profound insight into not only the specific case of Israeli-Jordanian negotiations for peace, but in negotiations in general and the kind of mechanics and dynamics that drive them. So thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, and let us hope that we will see better days.